The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Pennsylvania High School Football Report podcast. I'm Brian Linder. I'm here with Dan Sostek. Dan, let them hear your voice.
Hola.
And Eric Epler.
I'll do the hola as well.
And now when you hear their voices, you know who they are. If you listen to the podcast, you already knew who they were. And it's been an interesting week. A lot of great news, some very bad news, too, and we'll get to that at the end. And just some interesting stuff all around. First of all, I wanted to say, Dan, your guy Christian Barmore, New England Patriot, and Dan likes the New England Patriots. Christian Barmore, Newman Goretti kid, went there second round a couple years ago, Dan.
Yeah, and the year Mac Jones went first and he went in the second, the way I kind of sold Mac Jones being awful to myself is just, hey, if they had picked Christian Barmore 15th there, I'd be okay. So
and didn't Colorado's current defensive line coach Warren Sapp just like blast that pick and say that Barmore was never going to be, because like didn't he train with Warren Sapp or something?
Yeah, which is very funny because I don't know how you watch that kid play. I guess he's not a kid anymore, but he just seems like the most obvious good football player at that position. So
he got paid. He was for 4 years,
highest paid Patriot not named Tom Brady ever.
Like 4 years, $94 million or something like that. I think I saw
like $60 million guaranteed.
He was an animal in high school, but it's interesting. We had talked last week about these guys who are these high draft picks, maybe, and didn't have the like eye gouging numbers in high school. You know, just because, obviously at St. Joe's Prep, they're pretty much not playing in the second half.
Yeah,
and there's 15 guys who are catching balls, but Barber was that kind of guy. Like, he literally, I think he caught like 15 passes his entire career at Newman as a tight end. But yeah, he was a freak and multi-year All-State guy.
I'll never forget Warren Sapp throwing that kid under the bus when he got drafted. And turns out Warren was wrong.
I don't think Warren Sapp is. I think we have enough of a sample size to know that Warren Sapp is great, for one of the best football players of all time. Not the best talent evaluator or analyst of the game. So he probably knows more football than, he probably has more football knowledge in his pinky than I do. But
is this bad news, though, for our guy Deion Hayes, who just transferred from Pitt to Colorado and will now be getting coached up by Warren Sapp? I mean, on one hand, he's got a whole
I think that's not the only bad news I just think that program right now, we don't have to get into a Deion slam party, but what's going on there and how immature, everyone from the head honcho to his sons are coming off responding to a really well reported, or I don't know if you read the article where they basically talked to all the kids that transferred out of Colorado, which, gives you a slanted view. And I think the article addresses that, but it's a good thing to like give those kids a chance to kind of express how they felt. And then that, Deion did not really do a good job of proving the guy's point wrong. So it seems like
we can get into this for a second, because I think the whole nation, everybody's kind of interested in this. Last year I thought was going to be terrible, and then they started out really good, and I saw the makings of they had something. And then it kind of came back down to earth because they had limitations that we all kind of knew and expected. And then this year, I feel like he's lost some really good coordinators, some really good coaches. It almost feels like he's tweeting at kids, which I guess he's not, but his kids are tweeting at kids and they play for him on the team. I don't know. Colorado's going to be here's what I do know. Colorado will be must-watch football again this year.
Yeah. That's the whole point, isn't it? That's the whole point. I mean, obviously you stoked attendance out there was too. I mean, Colorado was pulling like 11,000 people again, so that's the biggest hit for him. I mean,
but I think at some point though, if you start, all this is That's all good if you can win football games.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's only been what, 2 years?
Yeah.
So
Well, this will be the
1 and a
second.
half. Yeah. So it's, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's when does the shine, go away?
Yeah.
And then you have to start competing. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's Dion. There's always an element of flash there that hypes people up. And obviously he's a huge draw, but you're right. I mean, I just, 4-8, 4-9, they go last year.
Well, someone made the point that it's tough when you rev up the other team to be playing as tough as they can when you're not really like a top 20 football team. And then, you're going to be getting the best. You're going to be treated on these schedules like you're the number one team in the country, but you don't have the talent of the number one team in the country. Like, and it's not a good place to be.
Right.
Well, that'll be interesting. We had another interesting kind of occurrence happen. NFL draft came and has come and gone.
Yep.
And we had a lot of PA flavor in the draft and even after the draft with some free agent signings and camp invites and stuff like that. What's jumping off the list of you guys coming out of that with our PA guys?
Well, you normally would start with the fourth pick, right? But I kind of don't think you can because we're in Pennsylvania, right? I almost think you have to start with Mr. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. going to the Philadelphia Eagles, fallen pretty far, a lot further than I think people because he didn't run very well. When you don't run very well and you're kind of slow and you're kind of small, that can be an issue. But I think it's just a great pick by the Eagles, even if he's not that great of a player, just because anytime he makes a play, that stadium's going to go insane. I grew up in Philadelphia during the prime Jeremiah Trotter days, and people just love Jeremiah Trotter down there. He would I think he had 3 different stints with the Eagles, and every time he would come back and just bring that juice. And his son also, to me, is just a kid that, yeah, he might not test that well, but I think if you watch him play, the kid's clearly as instinctual. He's from a football family, as instinctual as his dad. I'd be very shocked if he doesn't find a way to contribute to that football team.
I think Jeremiah Trotter is a guy who, in 1994, he would have been a first round pick, but now in 2024, everybody falls in love with the flashiness, the big verts, the big,
It's basically the love of the 40.
Yeah,
I mean, it's essentially what it is. I mean, if you, it's not so much even the vertical anymore. Although you take in the vertical big account, talking about defensive backs and things like that, but it's all about the 40.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at, a guy like Joe Alton, big 6 foot towering 6'10" dude running basically a 5 flat almost.
Yeah.
I mean, that's eye gouging. That's eye popping for anybody. And when you don't run, when you're, a quote unquote linebacker and you don't run a 4.5, 4.6, you're considered a throwback, like you mentioned, Brian.
Yep.
You're considered one of those inside guys like Butkus. I mean, what do you think Butkus' 40 would have been? I mean, probably
not
would have been
past the Joe Alton
7.
Yeah.
But that's what you're talking about. Those throwback inside linebackers are no more in the NFL. They really aren't.
I think that
it's going to start for the Eagles.
I mean, he's got a chance. The Eagles love playing those packages. Like, they have different packages. They like playing those, like Nolan Smith in the past them. But the thing is, like, they're obsessed with the 40 and they're obsessed with the 3-cone drill. And if you have one of those that aren't good, then they if you're not fast, you got to be agile. And I just don't think Trotter tested the way he needed to for someone who's not huge. Like, he's kind of a tweener as well. But anytime you watched him at St. Joe's Prep, we watched him at Clemson. The kid's as instinctual as it gets as a football player. And those guys, it's just like, Kyle Hamilton fell in the draft as a safety because he didn't run a good 40. And look at him, one of the best safeties in the NFL. I've always thought the 40 is it has its value in terms of like straight line speed, but it doesn't really tell you how a guy moves with pads on, and it doesn't tell you how well they're going to understand what's going on, how fast they're going to play. It's just two completely different things. You can run a good 40 and then get frozen on your feet because you don't know which way the blocking pattern is taking the running back, and Trotters never have an issue with that.
So what was he again, man?
You mean round?
Yeah, what round did he go in? Third?
He went in the 6th round, I believe. 155th. 44 picks away from the Tom Brady pick. 155. Eagles traded up to get him, which I thought was kind of cool.
I think he's going to start for him. I just do. Like, I like Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean's one of those podcasts. He's had some injury issues. I think he's probably also kind of like a thumper throwback type guy. I think Trotter might be a little bit better than him.
Well, all I know is the second he makes a single play, he picks off a pass or something, the link is going to go absolutely bananas. Because I mean, I don't know if you remember Trotter's celebration, the axe. He does the chopping of the axe when he gets a sack. I think he's done it before in Clemson games, but when he does that, and maybe I don't think Jeremiah ever got to wear the Kelly green like the Eagles get to wear now, but that'll be a fun day for them. So I know that he wasn't the highest picked PA guy, but that was the story. That was the biggest story to me. I mean, I think the close second isn't even Marvin Harrison, though. It's still, we talked about a little bit, Jared Verse, just because of how freaking cool that kid's story is, right? Like how awesome it is that a kid from Central Columbia and Albany found his way to be the 19th pick in the draft. Basically, the Rams hoping he's the guy to replace Aaron Donald on that defensive front. I mean, we talked about, we didn't even really necessarily remember him too much from high school at all. To go from that to being a first round pick, and we remember most players that were pretty good in the area. So to go from that to being 19th overall pick is pretty cool as well.
Well, Central Columbia is not exactly a powerhouse, Epler, and him going to Albany out of there tells me he was a good player, but maybe not as flashy, or maybe he was, obviously looks like he was under the radar at the time. Maybe he just got tucked away, and we always say they'll find you, but here's a kid who maybe was a little bit under the radar.
Did you read about how they found him too? They were just they were watching film on, I believe it was Syracuse or something. Florida State was watching film on Syracuse against Albany, and they just said, who the heck is this defensive end on University of Albany? And basically immediately reached out and was like, you should transfer to Florida State. And he was like, sure. And instantly became one of the best players in college. Just a cool story. Again, one of the transfer portal taketh away, but it can also give it too. So
I feel like that should be like illegal. That's illegal, right? You can't just reach out and say transfer over.
Yeah, I don't know if they officially did that or maybe just kept a note on them. I'm sure they did everything above board because it's Florida State, though. So.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
So I'm old enough to remember when they used to call it Free Shoes University or whatever. when wasn't it Peter Ward? Well, I don't know if it's Peter Ward. The guy that got in trouble. I love Peter Ward, though. I love Peter Ward, Santana Moss when he was at Miami.
Oh yeah,
bad dudes.
Back when college football was college football, right?
Peter Ward was amazing, but I think Santana Moss was right there with him.
Oh, Santana Moss is so fun.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, and obviously we kind of buried the lead there with the Marvin Harrison Jr. stuff. I knew Brian, even up until draft day, was texting me, hoping his Colts were going to get him. But I think the Cardinals are pretty like, we're not passing this kid up. We're like, I think the two teams that pretty much turned their picks in immediately were the Patriots at 3, immediately turned it in, picked Drake May. And then right after, the Cardinals immediately had to run up to the stanchion and just said, give us Marvin Harrison Jr. Because we talked about a little, there was some buzz about Malik Neighbors going number 3 or whatever, going ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. And at the end, it wasn't. Like I saw someone say that he didn't do any of the combine stuff, and he said, I'm not. Someone made the joke from Eastbound and Down. I'm not a professional exerciser. I'm a professional football player. And I think that it sums up what type of player they're getting. We've talked a lot about Marvin on the pod recently, but I don't think you can go too far talking about him.
The fun thing about him is he and I used to message back and forth when he was at St. Joe's. He's been running routes with his dad since, he was middle school. You're running routes with Marvin Harrison Sr. I mean, that's special. I'll tell you guys another one I wanted to bring up real quick. Not the flashiest pick, but a guy who's a winner and a guy who's going to go in there and be a starter eventually. I know it. Taki Smith from Emotep. We did his commitment video at PennLive when he originally committed to West Virginia. And he went there for a year or two and ended up at Georgia. Taki, I mean, I rode around West Philly with him, filming that thing. Had him in my car. We talked a lot throughout the years. That kid's a winner. He's always had he's going to get it done mentality, and he always has. He's not the biggest safety. He's not the flashiest safety, but he is a grinder, man. He'll go in there. He's going to hit guys. He can run and cover. He's going to make plays. He's a winner. So I think that was an 89th overall by Tampa Bay. I think he's going to be a starter for him.
Yeah. I just think like when you if you're a safety that's picked that high, I feel like the results you end up usually getting on the field pretty quickly, because that's one of the positions I think you can kind of just step right in and kind of do what you were doing in college, because it's not a ton of it's just a faster game, but you're still doing what you're doing. And yeah, he's a little undersized, whatever. Anyone who plays on the Georgia defense, I think, is gonna move over pretty quickly to the NFL.
He's a winner. So how about some of these other guys? We had free agent signings. I know locally, Andre White Jr. Got a camp invite from the Giants. I'm a little bit surprised that he didn't get a rookie free agent deal. I feel like he had some buzz building up around him, and then I know you said he ran a bad 3-cone, it looks like, and maybe that
3-cones everything. That's been like, to me, I feel like that's been one of the biggest developments in the NFL in the last like 15 years or so, is that how much these teams value the 3-cone for defensive players, because you just have to be able to pivot and move quickly in space, or else you're going to be a liability out there unless you're playing the run. And Andre's a smaller guy. Feels like it. I think there's probably just a bunch of teams who say, if you're below a certain height and weight and you don't run this 3-cone, we don't want you. Like I guarantee that's just how it is.
It's not like he's tiny though, right? I mean, he's
not tiny for sure, but
and I think he's kind of a long guy. When I say long, like he's got those long arms and legs.
He's a tweener, sort of between defensive line and linebacker, right? Like it's kind of, I don't know. I agree with you though. He's too athletic, right? To not even have, like, we saw some players who signed undrafted free agent deals who are not as good football players as Andre White Jr.
And he's a good person. So I'm glad he's getting a shot. I mean, I wouldn't shock me if he somehow parlayed it into sticking around a little bit.
Keaton Ellis got a shot too, right?
Keaton Ellis signed he got a deal, I think, right?
Yeah.
At the with the Titans. Former state college player, played at Penn State, and Keaton Ellis is a good football player. Keaton Ellis is another one where he might not be like the flashiest guy, but he can play. And it wouldn't shock me if he hung around the league a few years here.
Well, he's going to be a guy that if he hangs around, it's going to be special teams, right? Like he'll probably be a special teams guy. Like, Ep and I talked about it on a previous podcast. Kind of, a lot of these guys are going to have to, when you sign those UDFAs, you got to be like Forrest Ryan, right, from Waynesboro. You got to be able to be willing to do the dirty work, things like that. And I think Keaton Ellis will certainly be one of those.
The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.
Who else do we have? We have anybody else?
MJ Devonshire got drafted.
MJ, the pick guy.
Yeah, MJ Devonshire and Daquan Hardy both got drafted day 3. Kind of very similar players. I think Devonshire is a couple inches bigger, Hardy a little faster. But two players that I think are just, they might. I just feel pretty confident they'll stick around. Pitt defensive backs under Narduzzi have had a pretty good track record of sticking around, from Dane Jackson and DeMar Hamlin and Jordan Whitehead, and Penn State guys as well. Just, two programs that when you get a defensive player from them, you kind of can usually trust them to be pretty reliable. and they're both pretty versatile guys who can also return kicks and things like that. So I imagine at least get those practice squad chances.
Yeah, Daquan, I know he ran a pretty good 40 time. So
Yeah, he's
you
5'9", right? Like that's
he-
one of those things.
not the biggest dude, but definitely interesting guys. I think both of them can play. Daquan had that, I think, amazing state title game, didn't he, a couple years ago out where
Penn Hills, yep.
didn't he pick off like Manheim Central, I'm gonna say they beat, and he picked off, or he scored a couple touchdowns, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did.
Yes, he had a long bomb, like a 78, something like 79 yards. But he returned a kick. It was a kick or punt, I think, back. Yeah, he was pretty impressive, and you could obviously see the speed too. I mean, like you said, he's a smaller guy, so he sort of gets caught in the wind, and all of a sudden, boom, he's out of the pack. And no one caught that kid in high school. I mean, he was just a blazer. But yeah, he was been impressive. Keaton Ellis in high school too. I remember talking to a few coaches about him his senior year too. He was so technical. Like he was a really sound technical defensive back, and obviously that was something that he utilized big time at Penn State too to become a pretty impressive player. So I'm glad he's getting his shot too, because he deserves it. And like I said, I think he's a kid too that'll work his tail off, and I think he's a guy that'll catch, really get up to speed on scheme and things like that quickly. So guys in camp, guys who are smart too and have all the intangibles, they tend to stick around. So I think you're right, Brian. I think he can have a nice little career here. But again, is he the everyday starter, or I don't know, just because of his size. But he's a pretty impressive individual overall. So those tend to be guys you want to keep around.
How about Kyle Sheets?
Yeah, I was going to mention him. He's been
passes for 1,186 yards last year.
He's a guy that's been getting some buzz too. I've seen like national people kind of point out that he's almost one of the priority undrafted free agent guys. Slippery Rock's fine. Slippery Rock guys. I know some people. I have some friends that went to Slippery Rock. They're built a little different out there. I remember there was the baseball player from the area. Matt Adams was famous for being big. Matt Adams of Slippery Rock, and yeah, I mean, the Saints picked a couple. They picked Bub Means from Pitt in the 5th round, and Kyle Sheets as well. Again, we talked about it before, but it's always so cool to see kids who work their way up from that position. That really, like, if you get your chance, there's always going to be if you're good enough, there's going to be a chance. Like, you're not on an equal playing field. But man, some of these receiver stories about guys who make it, who end up becoming like 10-year pros, they'll find you if you're really that good that good. Even I always go back to Adam Thielen as one of those stories from Minnesota State, which I still don't know as a college. I still have no idea Minnesota State, and now he's probably going to end up with close to 10,000 receiving yards for his career just because he gets a tryout. Like, you never know. So. Rooting for guys like Kyle Sheets for sure.
Isn't that where Craig T. Nelson coached and coach?
Yeah. Yeah, I think was that Bemidji State?
I don't know what it was. I was just
we
probably out kids here with a coach reference.
Yeah. I watched some of Coach. I love that. I'm an old sitcom guy. I watched all of Cheers. Since I'm a Boston guy, so yeah.
Yeah. Wow, we'll have to go down the Cheers rabbit hole with you one day.
Yeah, I'm more of a Frasier guy than Cheers, but Mary Tyler Moore's
getting all the old sitcoms out of the way, Dan.
Yeah, I like the aesthetic.
I tell you guys, so we talked a lot here about obviously a lot of good life-changing opportunities for guys in PA. Did want to touch on obviously we've had a situation in our area that we've been covering, and it's really a heartbreaking situation where I had a young man here in the Harrisburg area named Justin Johnson. Last weekend, kids came over to his house, called him outside. I guess, you know, they were chasing him around. You can hear them say some stuff on video that they shouldn't have been saying. It's they told the kid, I guess when he was running, they said he's running back to Africa. And Justin's a black kid. These kids did appear to be white. Just wanted to bring this up because I was reading the story about him, and you know, uh, he went to Central Dauphin High School, and he had sickle cell, and that's been kind of ruled as the reason for his death physically. Now, I guess there's some debate about. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't even say it's debate. We're going to find out, what these kids were doing. They were targeting him, or what happened there, because obviously the physical exertion with the sickle cell led to his death. He came back in after all of this happened in his house, and he collapsed and he died. It's been a terrible story to have to follow. I guess now we wait to find out if charges are going to be brought. If these kids were chasing him and caused this, and it looks like they were. But bottom line, it's just a terrible, terrible story. I was reading about this kid, guys, and despite his physical issues, he wanted to be, he wanted to play in the NFL someday, and he was going to try to play football this year. I think they originally moved from Jamaica, and it's just heartbreaking to see. He's a young kid. He's in high school. It is a national story. We do think that these other kids involved were on the football team, or at least a couple of them were. Central Dauphin. I don't know how this is all going to shake out. Dan, I know you've been following it pretty closely along with me. You and I've texted different thoughts about this. It's a heartbreaker. It's a heartbreaker. At the very least, you have a young man who's died at a very young age who had big dreams. And at the very worst, you potentially have something here that's just ugly and maybe even insidious, So there's still a lot of facts to be gathered. Like I said, the video is troubling, to say the least. Dan, I know you've looked at this a lot. You and I probably haven't talked about it as much as Dan and I have. But any thoughts on this? I did want to address it because it does look like it involves some football players, and it does look like it involves a young man who had some dreams around this game that we talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to, start anywhere other than a 16-year-old is dead, and the rest of we have these little like fragments of what happened, and the picture that we currently have that we're currently working on right now does not look good. It just does. Like, you can say whatever you want. You never supposed to read the comments, but you read the comments and you see people turning this into something that it doesn't need to be. People are going off what they're going to go off, and it's tough to say just because we don't have the full police investigation, so you don't want to say anything definitive. But I just will say, like, if things end up being what they look like happened, it's just it's a depressing story regardless, because the kid has passed away. But if the surrounding circumstances are what happened, there's going to be a lot to reckon with. Well, not just individually, but as a community, and just as people, right? Like, just
Yeah.
like I get it. Like, kids are kids. They they don't have foresight for things like that, but there's a certain line, and I don't know. It's hard to talk about, really, just because there's so much in it that there's so much in it that we have to find out more about, and things like that. And there's some puzzle pieces and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, as it currently stands, it's just it's just a really sad thing. And I mean, you think about it all the time. Like Francis Ngannou posted about his 18-month-old son dying. You just think about someone losing a kid. Just, I'm not a parent, but I can't imagine there's a worse feeling on planet Earth.
I'm I'm,
Like,
I'm looking at the story we did from the vigil, and I mean, here's a quote from one of his classmates. He was the butt of a joke because of where he came from. He was always trying to make friends, and there are people who took advantage, and that's horrible. I mean, that's heartbreaking. And if that's what happened here, I hope that we see some sort of result um that brings justice to this. Um and again, I mean, we don't have all of the pieces. And if you go look on Penn Live, guys, we have a lot of stories here, from the cops to the family to and there's a lot to put together here. It looks really bad, obviously, from some of the video. There's a lot of facts to be gathered. But just reading that quote, you know, it's sad. Yep, you got anything to add to this one?
I just want to echo some of the things Dan said. Just how does this a family find peace when this a year, 2, 3, 5 years from now? I mean, it just knowing the struggle that the kid was under as is, to have to deal with anything extra, and I don't know what the extra will shake out to be. If anything, I don't know. Again, it's trying to put all these kind of pieces together. Um, but at the end of the day, a 16-year-old is gone. You know, um, and the struggles he already went through on a daily basis, and it's just I don't know. My heart goes out to the family, the parents for losing a child, and all of this. This is just a terrible tragedy, and if it's proven down the road um, that this expedited it, led to it, man, I don't know what the punishment should be. I don't want my mind to go that way.
yeah,
But I feel for the family, and just I wish them some kind of peace in all of this, because I've had friends who have lost children, and like I said, and I'm like, Dan, I don't have kids, but all of my friends have kids, and I cannot imagine what they're going through right now. I can't imagine.
I'll say this too, guys. And again, I'm not litigating this. I'm not, the video's the video. What was said there was what was said. Um, Stepping outside of this individual case, parents and teachers, coaches, young people in Dauphin County, Central Pennsylvania, you need to step back and take a look at things. And I'm stepping outside of this case for a minute. We heard the kids say what they said on the video. But he's going to run back to Africa. But let's step outside for a minute. Lower Dauphin, we had the racism issues. I believe it was Cedar Cliff Soccer had some accusations of girls dropping racial slurs on there a couple years ago. And then outside of that, there's been a whole lot of things. I had a dad from a school in that area who was going to do a story with us. He wanted to talk and about stuff his son went through. And he told me some really troubling stuff. And at the end of the day, he decided not to do the story because he couldn't move his son out of the school district. And I've personally heard a lot of that. Well, I would go on the record, but man, I have to, I have to go here, or I have to. And so there's an air, and I'm not saying this for Central Dauphin. I'm just saying this for all of Central Pennsylvania. There's a lot of troubling stuff, you know. And hey, Nebby, who used to work with us, used to tell me the stuff he used to hear from fans when Harrisburg would go on the road. Okay, this is awful. I mean, just be humans. Okay, treat each other with respect. It's not that hard. And there's a culture, I think, in Central Pennsylvania that is gross. And again, I'm not saying that this case was, we heard what we heard on that video. So but I'm not gonna, I don't want to get into the weeds with this case and or whatnot. As a whole, there are issues that need to be addressed by the adults. That's where it always starts, you know, where kids can feel so comfortable to be running around a neighborhood telling a kid, oh, he's running back to Africa, yelling it. So you can hear it. You can hear it clearly on a Ring video camera. And I have a Ring video camera, and I can tell you, you got to be yelling it pretty loud that far away from it for it to pick you up that well. So we got a culture, I think, that needs to be addressed. And I guess, you know what, it's probably across the country, right? Racism.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think a lot of times people try to put this on a specific pocket or a specific region. It like it's still everywhere. Like you can say it's not, but and you can there might be people that are, but it's just it's
I think what pushes me out about it, Dan, is I've said this. I'm from South Carolina, and then I went to Florida. And if I feel like people down south, there are a ton of racists down south. Okay. But you know what? They'll tell you they're racist. You know? And I feel like I came up here and I feel like it's a little bit more veiled. And it almost makes it, I don't know, a little more sinister, a little more gross. Because you're acting like, oh, this and that, and then you're really doing something else. Whole big thing, but I do think it probably is everywhere to some level. But like I said, I think at least they tell you who they are, down south.
Well, I mean, I think what you have to hope is somehow you have you have to hope that there's some sort of you can't even think of a a way to frame that specific phrase they said of it not being.
Yeah, what is there's I mean that there's no way you say to a black kid you're running back to Africa, or look at him run back to Africa, or whatever they said there, which was along those lines, and it not be racist.
Yeah, I mean it's a lesson to kids too. Like even if you think you're making like a joke or something or a funny joke, it's not going to come off as a joke if something serious happens. And
well, that's never, but that's never an appropriate joke.
No,
right?
that's what I'm saying. Like if even if that ends up being that it was just harmless, that they thought they were having teenage fun. That's not how this stuff works. It's you're in the real world when you do stuff like that. Like,
but where's the culture that supports though the kids saying that stuff so free and so open? What's up with that culture? So I do think. Look, I've had kids telling me about in the last week or two about finding nooses in the bathrooms and stuff like that, and again, I got and I know at least one of these people listens to the podcast, and it's like they tell you these things, but again, they're afraid to come onto the record because they have to live in these areas, which I think makes it even more important to figure out a way to shine some light on this stuff. But I don't know how we do it without people getting on the record. And I posted it on my Facebook. If you have stories like this stuff, I'm interested to talk to you, because I do think that some of this stuff needs to have some light shined on it. Because here we are, and we'll see what the rest of the details shake out around this. But we did want to bring this up. We did want to touch on this. It's something we have a lot of reporting on PennLive. We've been sitting here talking about it and kicking some stuff around, but if you want to see a lot of the facts from all of the angles.
Yeah, our news team's doing a great job on it.
Yeah, from lawyers to cops to, like I said, to the vigils, talking to kids that will talk at the vigils and stuff. And,
it's a big deal when they tell us to stay out of their way, right? When they say it's the news desk is handling it. So that's when it's a big deal.
So. Well, all right, guys. Look, I think we got a podcast. It's like I said, stay tuned to PennLive for that. We're doing a lot of spring football. Evan Wheaton was out at Cumberland Valley.
You see that picture of the kid bleeding?
Yeah, some kid bleeding, and
Yeah, maybe stop and give that kid a Band-Aid or something, like, maybe,
Yeah,
like, not
Yeah.
have him keep running routes. I don't know, it's just me.
Yeah, next time we have Josh on the program, we'll ask
Yeah.
in the podcast. We'll grill him a little on that one.
We wanna
Yeah.
put a blocker up in there, you
Yeah.
know?
We get our little bit of our Woodward and Bernstein on. Why are you letting the kid with a bloody face play football?
Yeah.
The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.